Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. Today we're checking out a case you guys have requested, the Corsair 2000D RGB Airflow. This is Corsair's attempt at a small form factor case. So what we're going to do today is we're going to see what makes this new case from Corsair tick, see what we can make fit, and do all of the wonderful building things that we do here on the channel, and we're going to test the thermals. So stick around, we're in for a heck of a ride. Let's do it. Let's start off with panel removal. It's very easy and it's toolless. There's 4 captive thumb screws on the back which remove the side panels. If we loosen those off, we can then pop the panel out to the side with these tabs on each of the panels, and the panel just pulls away, and the opposite side is exactly the same. Removing the front panel is the same deal. I just push on the edge of the front panel and it just pops out. And that's it. And lastly, the top panel. Same deal, just use your thumbs on each corner, push up, and we have access. These aren't the only panels you need to remove to get access to the case. There is a bracket on this side of the case here which the radiator mounts to, and to remove that, there's 2 screws at the top, and they come all the way out, and then you can pull the panel away from the case. For power supply support, the 2000D supports SFX and SFXL power supplies. This is the brand new SF1000L power supply from Corsair, and as you can see, it fits in very nicely with plenty of room to route cables and cable manage everything and button it up nicely. Now, the bracket for the power supply itself can also be removed with 4 screws, but I'm not going to do it that way for this video because you don't really need to. I think it might be easier just to have the power supply drop in from this side here. There's also this included cable. This is for plugging into your power supply. It's got a right angled connector on one end to make it a little bit easier because the power plugs into the top of the case, and then you just plug your regular power cable into this here. For hard disk and SSD support, you've got this 2.5-inch bracket here for 2.5-inch drives only, and there's 2 spaces to mount drives, so you can mount a drive here and here, and this is on the back side of the power supply shroud. The 2000D supports ITX motherboards only, and I'll just put a board in so you guys can get an idea of how this fits in. It's got pegs on the top left and bottom right to hold your motherboard into place when building, if you're building your PC in this orientation, which is typically what I do here on the channel because, yeah, it just makes it easier to film. On the 2000D, your maximum GPU clearance is about 365 mils of maximum length, but one thing you need to take into account with this case is the thickness of your card. So let me explain this. So first of all, we've got the 4080 Aero Gigabyte card here. This is a 4-slot card. Now, even though a 4-slot card physically fits inside the case, you won't be able to make it clear, and you're going to run into issues with actually plugging it in to the PCIe slot. So yes, it fits inside of the case, but no, it doesn't work because you won't be able to plug it in. So it's a bit of an issue, right? But if we are thinking of cards more in the size of 3-slot cards, like the RTX 4090 Founders Edition, the 4090 Founders Edition will go in here with no problem whatsoever. But as always, be aware, things like this 12-volt high power connector here, you may run into issues with bending cables if you're not using a 90-degree cable, which is something we're probably going to be doing in this build, which is not using an adapter, because that's why we do the things we do, to show you if it's possible without having to buy anything extra. There are 3 pre-installed RGB fans. These are different fans than you would typically find from Corsair. These look to be 12mm slim fans, and they've also got these fan grates on the back of them so you don't accidentally have cables flying into them, or you don't put your fingers in there or whatnot. But you'll also notice that the fan blades, given the thickness of these fans, the pitch is quite aggressive, which is something you would typically see for high airflow with slim fans. While we're on the topic of fans, there's additional fan mounts on the back side where the GPU would typically go in case you were not using a GPU for some reason, or you had a thin enough GPU to put fans between it, or if you were going to do something silly like deshrouding your GPU. You could do that if you really wanted to with these here, so you can do two 120mm fans on the back if you really wanted to. But that's not all. On the front of the case here, we've got three 120mm fans already installed. You can do full height fans if you really wanted to, so 25mm fans, or probably even get away with doing 30mm fans if you really wanted to, but just be aware that it's gonna block some things on your motherboard if that's what you wanted to do. As well as that, for liquid cooling and other fans, you've got this bracket here, which will allow you to install up to a 360mm liquid cooler on this side of the case here. This will also do 280, 240, 140, 120, whatever you like. While we're on the topic of fans and all that jazz, there is an integrated RGB controller for Corsair fans here. This uses their 4-pin addressable RGB connector, as well as a PWM fan hub, which will allow you to connect up to 6 fans in total. The integrated connectivity here is quite good. To control everything, you'll need to use Corsair iQ, and there is some additional cabling you need to keep in mind for that. Speaking of internal case wiring, we've got our front panel audio connector, we've got USB 2.0 for the built-in RGB controller. There's also two SATA or SATA connectors for powering the PWM fan hub and the RGB controller. There's your regular cables for your lights and your switches to let you know your system's up and running and to turn on your system. There is a USB Type-C front panel connector, as well as a USB 3.2 Type-A connector. For front panel I/O, we've got a power button, two USB Type-A ports, a USB Type-C port, a combined headphone and a microphone jack, and a reset switch. The 2000D has a couple other interesting characteristics. First of all, as I mentioned, the power supply plugs in with a cable via the top of the case with that right angle cable. They've included little Velcro straps here to hold the power cable down. They've even gone as far as having Velcro tie downs on the back here to run the cable all the way down to the cutout where the rest of the cables come out. This hole on the bottom of the case here is where all of your cables for your system come out, including for your graphics card. Now, the way you would get access to this, there's this little plastic panel on the bottom of the case here. It's got a little push tab. You push that in and you can pull this panel away, and this gives you access to everything you would typically get access to on the back of your system. This allows you to route cables from stuff that's plugged into your motherboard straight out the back hole here, as well as plugging in your display cables for your graphics card and routing it out the back here. This should be more than enough clearance for any of your display cables, if you're wondering. And it's a lot more space than you'd find on something like a Mesh Room or a Meshify for this same thing. So they have thought about this. There's a removable magnetic fan filter on the back of the case, and to remove it, you just slide it up. It's also got this little notch on the bottom that catches the filter so it doesn't accidentally slide down too far. That's everything I think you need to know about the Corsair 2000D RGB Airflow for now. Let's build and test the thermals, see what the real story is. Let's take a look at the thermals of the Corsair 2000D Airflow. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the thermals are very, very good for a small form factor build. In fact, these thermals are great for a full-size desktop build as well. The thing is with the 2000D, it is not really a small form factor case, if that makes sense. Like, it is and it isn't. As far as all the hardware that was used in this build, there's a PCPickleList in the description down below, as well as that there's little cards in those parts of the video that talk about all the hardware and show everything. Right, so what do I think about the 2000D? The build quality is classic Corsair. It is very, very good. There's a few things about this case that kind of surprised me, and I didn't notice it when I was looking at the case closer before, but it's got pretty interesting ways to route cables next to the side of the motherboard, if that makes sense. It kind of bunches all the cables up and runs it in like a single cable snake up the side, which I thought was very, very cool. Cable management was a breeze. I've got no qualms with how to build in this case. It was very, very easy, very straightforward. Everything fit in there without any issues whatsoever. So I think Corsair's done a fairly decent job in that regard. There is one thing that I wanted to mention. The reason why I changed the front fans from the ones that come with the case is I wanted to talk to you guys about the clearance between using the slim fans that comes with the case or using regular 25mm thick fans. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I said maybe you could fit 28 or 30mm wide fans. It doesn't look like that's the case. It basically sits on the motherboard at that point, even with 25mm. So this is one of those small form factor cases that it doesn't need to be pretty inside, it needs to be functional because you can't really see inside, right? That's the story with a lot of small form factor cases. People will piss and moan about cable management and things not fitting in these smaller cases, but the whole point is the case is small. There's something else I thought was worth mentioning as well. The fans on the radiator, I decided to leave them on the inside of the case, not the outside, so you don't see the light from the fans on the outside of the case. The only reason is the fans were pre-installed on the radiator in the box, and I was like, I'm not taking 12 screws out just to make it look a little better, given the fact that you can't see the side of the case anyway, you can see the front. So I was like, you know, we'll bling out the front. You can still see the lighting inside. The other thing is all of the fans and basically everything inside of this is all that new Corsair iQ Link stuff. One thing I really need to mention though is if you're changing the front fans in this case, you will 1000% need the right angled adapter for the iQ Link cable. It just will not fit with the regular one. With all of that said, I think this is a fairly decent small form factor case and I don't hate it. The footprint is nice. It's not too big. It is bigger than your typical small form factor case, but you have so much potential for fitting stuff in here that it almost makes it worth it. As well as that, if you really wanted to, you could custom water cool in this pretty easily. So there is that. So take that into consideration if it's something you're looking at doing. But the price is where this gets more interesting than anything else. So in the US, this configuration is $199 US, 3 addressable RGB fans, RGB controller, PWM fan hub. It's not absurd, but I mean, small form factor is generally more expensive than regular stuff. In Australia, for the non-RGB version, you're looking at 229 Aussie dollars without fans and PWM controllers and RGB controllers and all that jazz. But if you're looking for this exact configuration here in Australia, $329. So yeah, not a cheap case, but it is classic Corsair. The build quality is excellent. The execution is pretty good. And I was saying to Claire at one point, I feel like they did things with the case for cable management and building that look like it's a mistake, but it's absolutely on purpose, right? And that's classic Corsair. So yeah, not a terrible case. I didn't hate it, and yeah, that's how I feel about it. And I'll be honest with you guys, I didn't look at anyone else's reviews because it doesn't matter, right? Anyways, that's going to do it for me. If you like the music you heard here, I make all the music. It's available by clicking that join button somewhere down there. Please get yourself subscribed. I am your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peek. We seeking. I like it. What do you reckon, Claire? Do you like it?
I think it's cool.
I like it. I think it looks really, really cool. I like the way the fans look through the front panel. It looks like it's a bigger case, like it goes a bit deeper, but then it's just a little cube.
I like the footprint.
Would you use something like this for your own rig if it was white?
Yes, that was exactly what I was about to say.
Really? You would?
I think I want it in white.
Okay, maybe we'll get you one in white. And the only problem is,
Oh no.
mini-itx board. Not a big problem, but they generally don't have 10 gigabit Ethernet. And when are they going to start to do 10 gig Ethernet on ITX boards? Start doing it, and I'll switch everything to ITX. Yeah. Anyway. Yep. What's going on here? What's this? Oh, okay. Fair enough. Oh, you're still here? Subscribe. Thanks for watching.